So, good afternoon to everybody. Hope you have had a nice tea or coffee break and feel awakened and refreshed for the last 1.5 hours of our second Global Soil Week day. I know it's a challenge to keep awakened by now. We had a very interesting but a very long plenary just before the coffee break. So our challenge, that's to see mine and the one of my cherished panelists, is to give you still the final thrill for today before preparing for a certainly very nice evening. So, what is this review panel about? We have 2 days behind us and 2 days ahead. So it's just time to have a quick look at what we have achieved. And what should we have achieved? One thing that's in our program, we should have understood better the role of soils in the nexus. And I discovered yesterday that it goes not without saying what the nexus is. I had a chat yesterday by night with my well-renowned participant of this Global Soil Week. And it's happened to him to say, okay, I don't know what the nexus is. Could you please explain me? So I've asked for some help on how to explain that. And that's what I found for the nexus. This afternoon, with the help of the nice young people just left to the entrance from here, I took some water. I took my own energy and a big pot, and I tried to put both in it. And the outcome should have been to produce some food, fruit and staple food, cereals. So with my energy, the water, will there be some food coming out of it? No, it won't, because something was missing, and what was soil? These are the nice soil seed balls, and when having this soil with the embedded seeds, and the energy and the water, then you will have the food. That's our nexus. So, I will challenge our participants on that. The next issue we should have managed to manage a discussion on approaches and strategies, and to do that across different disciplines and across different stakeholders. That's to say, not stick within soil scientists, but discuss across scientists, policymakers, private sector, and others. Did we succeed? So, I want to have some feeling of yours. If you consider what these 2 days brought to you, what are your big message? Did you have some new understanding of soils in the nexus? And I would like to have some of you responding to that question. Somebody who didn't really speak up, would you tell us what's something about your takeaways from the past 2 days? Would you be so kind to do that?
I just came.
You just came? Okay. Can I ask your neighbor? Don't tell me you didn't, you just came.
No, I followed since the beginning, and it's the second time I'm here. So I think there was some involvement since the last year, new topics brought in, and you see that comes to maybe a series of Global Soil Weeks, and that we have to join the forces and see, as mentioned before, in maybe 5 years, what we really achieved instead of only discussing here, but what happens then in the real world outside for the farmers, for the consumers, what happens. And I think we are in a good way.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? You are smiling at me, so you're my next victim. Your takeaway message from the past 2 days.
Yes, well, I'm Alice Baumann. I'm the president of the Women for Water Partnership. And a lot of the things that I heard, they are familiar because all those women's groups working on the ground, they take an integrated approach between food and water and energy. And I realized that we completely forgot about the soil. So for me, it was good to be here, or it is good to be here, and to include soil in the nexus.
Okay, thank you. Soil scientists tend often to be elderly men, so I would like to, sorry, pardon to all soil scientists, so I would like to address to one of the young ladies being here.
Okay.
What was your gain in the past 2 years? 2 days, sorry.
Well, I'm Eleonora, TU Berlin, and I have a very good surprise that the public policies, or the people making public policies are here, pushing or working together with the scientists. So that's very good surprise.
Okay, thank you so much. So let me come back to our panel. So our first guest is Vanira, oh, I have to put up my glasses, Nuptam Panyama, and she's from the Secretary for Environment and Climate Change Management in Malawi. Yanira, we are very happy to have you with us, and we would like to hear, let's say, your big two takeaways that we will take home. What are your big messages from the past 2 days?
Thank you, and this is my first time to be here, and I've definitely learned a lot. The fact that we cannot talk about soil without considering issues of water. We need to consider issues of water, but we also need to consider the fact that soil is on land. And what is on land? Natural resource management, that has to be considered. And the fact that we also need to consider energy. Issues of energy have been mentioned. If there's a lot of siltation, it does affect energy, low energy. But one thing that I also wanted to probably mention is the fact that we are here probably talking to each other as scientists, people who are in the energy sector, in the water sector, soil sector, agriculture sector, but where are the policy makers? Because yes, we have the policies in relation to agriculture, land, water. Are they harmonized? That's the question that probably has also been raised. Are they harmonized? Do they talk to each other? If they don't talk to each other, how do we integrate them? On the other hand, the finance people, economists, very important, the planners. We can do everything, put up the policies together, but if we don't involve the planners, what is our entry point? Those are the issues that I've learned, but I also want to mention about indigenous knowledge. Yes, we have the science, but the communities out there, they know a lot. We need to involve them. The communities are the ones who can give us the drive to do research. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So a call for integration of policymakers, how to address them for financial people and also for indigenous communities. With a call for addressing the policymakers, I would turn to Luc Nyakaja. He's an architect with a passion for landscape and the ecological restoration. He's the outgoing executive secretary of the UN. Outgone, yes. Executive secretary of the UNCCD. And he has been engaged a lot in the debate on Rio +20, on the SDGs, defending the idea of a land degradation neutral world. Now you are free from all political constraints. What would be your conclusions and your recommendations on how to deal the issue of the SDGs, and counter the barriers we have with policymakers? What would you do, and what would you recommend to the Global Soil Week and the follow-up?
Well,
you don't need it. Yes, for sure.
well, I think First of all, it's a pleasure to be here and to be back the Soil Week. And as an outgone executive secretary, it's quite cheering and fulfilling to see how the initial idea of going land acquisition neutral is picking up, and your enthusiasm to ensure that it makes it through the SDGs. What matters for us is to get the language right. It's not about what we think and the best way to craft it in scientific terms. It's about the best way to sell it in New York. Please be aware that if we fail to sell it in New York, we have failed indeed. The initial idea that we have had in Secretariat was zero net land degradation. And I remember an ambassador telling me, look, this will not fly. Because of the zero, it will not fly. So I backed the idea of zero net land degradation by the one of going land degradation neutral, or building a vision of a land degradation neutral world. And at the end of the day, it has been so easy to kill zero net. But here we are now discussing on going land degradation neutral, and I'm quite surprised of the variety of ideas and proposals coming from different walk of life regarding how we should promote it. So I think we need to bring from here a team of people who understand the language they speak in New York and craft what we want from here in their language. Second, I believe that we need to talk about gaining ground. And gaining ground is, of course, about reducing the trend of degradation, but also about restoration, rehabilitation, regeneration. Name it the way you prefer, but name it the way that is likely to have the buy-in also out there. And I think that gaining ground is not only about human security, but it's also about the economic aspect, and it's also about addressing the issue of vulnerabilities. And unless we manage to put all those aspects clearly, we may not make it through SDGs and even targets.
Okay. Has that consequences also for the way we will draft the agenda for action by the end?
I do think. I really think that finalizing the agenda for action by the end of this week, second Global Soil Week, is also about what do we do from here. Please be aware that we do not have 2 years. We have a couple of months from now till 2014, because sometimes by November 2014, or even a bit earlier than that, they will start negotiating on the formulation of the SDGs and the targets. So we need to understand that we just have maybe 3 months or 6 months from here onward.
Okay, thank you. So, yes, Weigelt, you have a volunteer for working a little bit on the SDG element of the agenda for action. So let me approach to our next panelists. I have next to my left, I have Günther Bachmann. He's the General Secretary of the Council for Sustainable Development in Germany. And he has worked also for the German Federal Environmental Agency, the UBA. He has expertise in soil protection. And from your point of view, this challenge that we managed to build a dialogue across the different groups of stakeholders, do we succeeded in the past 2 days? What can we do for the forthcoming days? Are there issues that we have to dig deeper into?
Well, I think this Soil Week already made a difference, the one before and this one, in bringing together this community. And this is a big challenge and a big success in having you all here and discussing these topics. But then, the good action is always the enemy of what could be achieved in the future. And I would like to share the idea of connecting along the value chain, because that, in New Yorker terms, that is what people are concerned about: the value chain of cotton, the value chain of rice, of corn, of leather, of all these resources we are using. And while we look into these values, you see there are lots of stewardship concepts. The stewardship for marine environments, this forest stewardship. My idea is, why couldn't there be something like a soil stewardship community, which would then provide soil-related information to those product chain regulations or regimes that would safeguard the future use of cotton. So we are bringing the soil into this. That would be my idea of further advancing this community into something that really makes a difference when other people talk about products that are related to soils. That is what I would like to achieve, what I would like to see happening in the future.
Okay, so work along the value chain, look at the commodity as well, do not see soils independent from the commodities that we produce out of it, and have some soil stewardship.
And be very clear that there's a disaster out there. You are the experts in food policies related to soil, and you all know about the food waste. Mm-hmm. You all know of hunger in the world. Every 6 seconds a child dies because it's of hunger. And if you count it down, just another child has died. Mm-hmm. And this is what food is about, to bring these interests together and to provide some really decent information on how to deal with resources along the food chain. Mm-hmm. And pre-harvest losses and post-harvest losses, all this comes together when we are thinking about the soil protection stewardship. Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm. I would jump to Ronald Vargas. Many of you know him. He's FAO Soil and Land Management Officer, and he's particularly involved in the Global Soil Partnership and its International Technical Panel on Soils. What Günther just mentioned, having a soil stewardship group, could the technical panel provide for something like that? The idea, if it emerges from this Global Soil Week, to work along very concrete commodities, can we link up with the International Technical Panel on Soils? What are cooperation modes that you could imagine on this basis from here to future terms?
Thank you. Definitely, if I would like to address that question in a proper manner, the establishment of the Intergovernmental Technical Panel on Soils indeed has one of them trying to respond to the needs coming from the society and from the different sectors. Why? We have experienced that science and scientific advance are very acknowledged by decision takers and makers. Therefore, we needed that for the soil area, and that is why we spent some time in trying to establish this panel. And definitely, we believe that they could try to address and provide us with scientific advice at high level, of course, in order to have an impact on any decisions at global level, but with direct inputs at local level. And basically, we could do that because now we are starting. And the success of this panel will be only possible if they produce something useful and they get the credibility by all the different societies and the different users. For instance, trying to understand this is a very good and I think important activity that we would try to allocate into our mandate, but definitely the panel is for that, and I really invite everyone to try to trust this panel and try to give them this kind of task, because we need to get we are facing a very unique momentum for soils, and we need to really take advantage of it. And the only way to take advantage of it will be about developing actions that will impact and will have the credibility by the other factors in the nexus on how the soils community could contribute. And definitely in these 2 days, we saw a lot of energy flowing here. Let's get all that energy together for a benefit. Meaning, let's transform that into actions so that in the next phases, we will report what we have been doing and we will learn from our mistakes, I'm sure.
Thank you, Ronald. I have next to Günther, I have Jennifer Franco. She's a researcher at the Transnational Institute and coordinator of TNEI's agrarian justice work. Jennifer, you have worked a lot on land rights and reform in the Philippines. We are close to the local people, and we are trying here to establish a science policy dialogue. But the relevant thing is, Do we generate out of it, during the past 2 days, something that's useful also for the local level?
Well, I've only been here for today, so
Okay.
unfortunately, and I really regret that I wasn't able to be part of the discussions yesterday. But what I see is I'm been pleasantly surprised is maybe too strong about some of the things that I've been hearing. I really like that there's recognition that actually at the community level, resources are integrated. And I think the discussion here has really pulled out questions that need to be addressed around how to do many things, how to integrate resources in resource management, how to integrate local level concerns and management practices actually with global governance discussions and many others. And I see that there is discussion of who, in terms of sort of who. I felt there were some discussions about sort of who wins, who loses in terms of the benefits of use and distribution of that, and some other things. But I find a little bit what's lacking, and I think what people at community level would really want to hear more about is questions about who decides, because there's a lot of discussion here about policy making, policy decisions, formulating agendas in these efforts to integrate good policy on management of natural resources. But that raises questions about who decides many things, including how do you value soil, how do you value land and water, and maybe broadening beyond economic valuations of natural resources. And I think one bit that is missing for me, which is actually quite an important bit, is the question of rights and land rights, and who decides matters related to land rights. I mean, I appreciate this idea of stewardship and recognition of indigenous knowledge about how to use and manage resources. But it's important, I think, to remember and sort of dial back the discussion a bit to reflect on the fact that these discussions are happening in an institutional context. If you go to the community level, there are land rights, and these are not just about who possesses or owns what, but decisions about how resources are used and how they're managed and for what purposes. And I think this needs to be amplified in the discussion.
Okay, so I think we have a very strong recommendation for tomorrow's debates. I think we have a panel that deals with creating societal changes, and there we might accommodate a bit more the issue of who's deciding on natural resources. Do we address land rights in the right manner, and do we talk also to those who have to decide and who do decide? Still, a local level. Sirajul Islam, you are the next on my list. You are the program head on agriculture food security program BRAC in Bangladesh. Your work is about food security for a large number of poor people in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
So we heard about the science policy interface. What's your takeaway for your work at local level?
Yeah.
Is there something in it, or are we missing our target?
We are actually in line. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer to invite us in this great moment to participate and also to learn. You are asking about the learning. So one of the learning, or you may call it relearning, that united we stand and divided we fall. So we are united here globally. So obviously we will achieve something. So that is the great learning from us. And I want to cite a statement from the Cuban president, Fidel Castro, in 1998. He rightly mentioned that nowhere in the world, in no act of genocide, in nowhere are so many people are killed per hour per day as they killed by hunger. So he rightly mentioned the food security, and food security as important as a military security of a country. And this food security actually coming with this nexus, what I have learned in this conference, that soil, water, and the crops. You have already shown these things. So these are the, the nexus and the interaction of this tree. That is the food security. And you rightly mentioned that I came from a country with 160 million peoples in a small piece of land of 140,000 square kilometers. And each year, another 1.8 million people actually adding to this population. And for this, the added population, we need 0.4 million tons of rice, the most staple food of Bangladesh, per year to produce. So this is the context of Bangladesh, how we have to achieve the food security using the natural resources in the sustainable manner.
And did we succeed in providing some answers to open questions in order to feed those many poor people?
Yes, we have succeeded in several ways, although I just want to mention one statement that the food security in Bangladesh actually has long been synonymous with the rice self-sufficiency, because rice is the staple food. And we have made a respectable progress in rice production. And you may be aware that we have tripled our production from 11 million tons in 1971 to 33 million tons in last year, 2012. So all of this achievement came from the, obviously, the varietal improvement, the adoption of the high-yielding varieties by the farmers, and also the tremendous, the infrastructure development of our country in terms of, the irrigation by the private sector entrepreneur coming with the deep tube well and the shallow tube well. So this is our success. We are sustaining with a big population, with a small country, with this food production.
Okay, thank you. One point we addressed several times is policy issues. We have with us Rainer Kaiser. He's the Director of Resources Efficiency and Soil Protection in the German Ministry for Environment. Welcome to us. And you listened also to the debates for 2 years. What are your 3 main points that you got from the discussions, or 3 main messages that you would provide for further debates during this week?
In general, my impression is that the format of this conference was a big success. I was quite impressed to see plastically, once again, how important and how dramatic in some cases the situation, the problems as to soil are in the various countries, be it erosion or desertification, be it loss of organic material or drought. To see that plastically in country examples is a different thing than to know it abstractly, that it is a global concern, what we all accept. And I was also impressed how many topics have been raised, how many problems are worked on. Very abstract ones like SDGs, very concrete ones like if you want to give subsidies for fertilizing, how to structure these subsidies, very concrete questions. Big spectrum, many working groups on many topics, and I think the vast spectrum of people coming here, everybody has found something interesting for him or her. Now, I would like to stress 3 points where I think the accents might be even stronger than they are. Everything of that is touched somehow and even covered in the program. But my personal impression is these might be things of special attention or a little bit more attention in future work. First one, we speak very much about problems, and that is absolutely necessary to make the dramatic problems a matter of conscience. But the thing which really takes people and policymakers with you is if you explain how to tackle these problems, that there are possible solutions, that there are good examples which you have to spread. So speak a little bit more about success stories, be it in the fight against erosion, be it the regreening things. Practical examples put in the middle, exchange of good practice as an important topic. My second item is, it is hard, it is difficult, but we should really stress and continue the work on indicators. This general and difficult topic has a special political importance, and I'm very enthusiastic that there will be formed a working group in this framework, and I would like to encourage them to be courageous. If there would be an easy solution without risks to the indicator topic, we all would know about that since a long time. So whatever you do, there are risks and there are deficiencies in that. Try. Yeah? You won't come probably out with one indicator. I don't believe that. But perhaps you come out with a very limited number of indicators you can agree upon, covering various aspects which have been raised in the respective panel. My third point is taking up an impulse from Mrs. Lenz from UN Habitat. We talk very much and with good reason about agriculture here, with very good reason. But we should be careful not to concentrate our attention totally to agriculture. We should also think about soil in other contexts. For instance, soil in cities. The necessity to cover soil by city growth will be tremendous in the next years. And there is the immediate question, how much soil must really be sealed in this development? It's a very, very concrete practical question. The next question is, what can we do to at least frame this process? Can we concentrate city development to the center of the cities, reuse contaminated or otherwise already used sites? How much does us help that in various situations? Or if you think about soil cities, you immediately fall on the topic of garbage. The most effective way to create new contaminated sites in soil is a bad garbage management. That's what we did in Germany, legally depositing garbage here and there without even having good records where we did it. Or by neglect, just accepting that garbage was distributed here and there and there and there. These are problems which are very, very costly until now.
I think you have...
So my third point, just speak about that. And now I've spoken very long. Thank you that you listened to me so long.
Okay, thank you. So we have the agenda for the next Global Soil Week, indicator subsidies cities. All right, Franziska has been listening, so the agenda is done for next time. Less work for you. Still, it's about soil, and soil needs science. We had this time much less soil scientists with us than during this first Global Soil Week. But one of them, the president of the International Union of Soil Sciences, Ye Yang from Korea, is with us. Soil science. Yeah. Has an adequate place here at the Global Soil Week?
Of course.
Are there open? Are you satisfied, or are there open topics that you would like to have addressed during our further work?
Sure. Well, during today and yesterday, we have a lot of debates and discussions about science, policy, governance, security, nexus, so on and so forth. Well, I have attended so many soil science meetings, but this is the only soil-relating meeting where scientists feel lonely. Well, I think the policy and thus implementation of policy should be based on more or less science and scientific findings in sustainable development. And I have a very concrete example, but if I have given more times later on, I can introduce case. And second point I would like to make is the soil scientists and soil community people achieved tremendous like good findings in increasing crop yield production and thus, securing food security. And we have to think about those kind of achievements by dividing into 2 eras. One will be up to Green Revolution era, and then the other one will be after Green Revolution in the Sustainable Development era. Professor Lal, I already read his paper, but he mentioned in detail, if someone else asks me, I will hand that question to Professor Lal. So in other words, we have to praise our achievement very highly. In the next few years, in the international meeting or platform, soil should be in the agenda in those meetings. If we evaluate our achievement, the soil will go into the underground. And if we highly evaluate our achievement in science, soil will go agenda in the international meeting, I think. So even though there will be more disputes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We want to make this Global Soil Week a success. And Yanira, if you come home to Malawi next week and your colleagues, your president will ask you, you are traveling such a lot, was it really worthwhile going to this Global Soil Week? What will be the one argument that you say, okay, it was a big success and it was necessary to go there?
That's a very good question, and I was, if I'm asked that question, and definitely what I have learned from here is not just the scientific information that is coming up, but also the arguments that we, as scientists, because I'm a scientist, before I became an administrator, I'm a scientist. I worked in agroforestry before. The issue is the fact that we need to give opportunity to scientists to demonstrate how much they have done and how that can impact on the economy of our countries. Yes, there are opportunities that are given to policymakers, but most of the time we don't interact with the scientists. It should be either ways, us inviting the scientists to interact with us so that we hear from them what are the problems and how we can, what is the entry point in relation to policymakers, planners. But on the other hand, it should also be the scientists themselves inviting the other group. Because definitely we're not going to make any headway if we talk to ourselves. And if we don't interact with the other group. So to me, this meeting has been very important. But on the other hand, issues of implementation, very important. Issues of reform, very important. And speaking from deep down my heart, issues of budget allocation. Those are issues I always mention. Talking to a president or a political person, issues of budget allocation are important to healthy education, but not necessarily to science. With what I have learned today, food security, water affect health, and that does indirectly affect education too. So those are the areas which I think I would concentrate on trying to make an impact on the political arena.
Okay, thank you, Manira. I would not like to have the panel just talking among themselves, I would also invite you to address questions to the panel. You heard a couple of suggestions for a forthcoming agenda, for things we might do better in terms of integrating other stakeholders. We had 2 strong points from Reinhard Kaiser. What is your impression on that? Any questions to the panel on what have been their reflections on the review of the Global Soil Week up to now? Everybody's tired? Ratan, no, he's not yet tired. You're never tired, Ratan, aren't you?
Thank you, Madam. I have 2 comments, if I may. One is for Dr. Sirajul Islam from Bangladesh. First of all, congratulations for increasing production of rice from 11 million ton to 33 million tons. That's a great success story. We were talking about the indicators of soil management, and we were thinking about if there is one indicator. In your case, obviously, the indicator is arsenic poisoning. There has been a strong problem of arsenic in soils, in water, even in rice, and therefore millions of people are affected. How are you addressing the problems of soil management to alleviate the arsenic? That obviously has to be an indicator. I want to go back to Dr. Yang's comment, if I may, please. I think your comment about what should be on the agenda, I was thinking whether the question is of, and this also came up in the morning, whether soil should be in the center of this circle or not. And I think it should be. And the reason is what you indicated, whether it's a population density, whether it's a deforestation, whether it's a land degradation, its neutrality, whether it's a climate change and achieving 2 degrees centigrade limit, whether it's a food insecurity, whether it's a water pollution and water scarcity, whether it's a biodiversity, and whether it's a political instability and civil strife. The agenda issue for all of those have to be soil in the center, and that has to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. Would you respond on the question on the one and only indicator?
Yeah, we have the problem of arsenic and other soil-related problem, but still, you know, we are a big populated country, so we cannot afford to without increasing the yield. So we are giving mass emphasis on the productivity of the soil, how to intensify the cropping intensity in Bangladesh. You must be aware that in some of the cases we have tripled our cropping intensity also. So by doing this, we also obviously, you know, the depleting our soil nutrient and also over mining the groundwater, and that actually consequence on the arsenic contamination in some of the areas. We are very much aware of it, and the government and the NGOs are trying to, you know, to mitigate this one through different projects, but still we are suffering this problem with the arsenic in Bangladesh.
Okay. Next, please.
Yes, I would like to raise an issue from our practice on the ground, which I found in the debate this morning is also an issue in soil. And it is the acceptance of solutions by the population. I know there was a recent audit at the European Union on water projects, and then they found that, they found that although technically the projects were totally in order and the solutions were best, more than half of the beneficiaries was not reached. And this is about billions of millions of investment. And this has to do with whether or not the solution that is technically the best or scientifically the best is socially acceptable within the communities. And I would like to invite the panel to comment on that.
Mm-hmm. Who would take up the challenge from the panel? Is it a debate for now, or is it rather a debate for tomorrow's panel when we discuss on societal changes, how to address correctly all stakeholders? Maybe it's something we could include there. You want to comment on that, Günther?
I would like to make a point on science, the question before. What I see is that we need a strong, a bold voice from the scientific community and within the scientific community, not within the society, but the scientific community, that makes the point and asks or demands for more money devoted to soil science, because that is what we need. It's very simple. If there's Bill Gates out there or the Clinton Initiative on the foundations and they are spending millions of US dollars for various useful projects, why don't they spend another set of money for soil-related work? And that would be what I see is needed here, a voice in the scientific community that's saying, well, soil, while it is at the center of food, at the center of whatever, needs to be addressed more seriously. And if I may, there's New York language out there for sustainable development goals. And this language, Jeffrey Sachs says, well, we need an economy within planetary boundaries. And the decision, what is a planetary boundary, that's up to the scientific committees. So the problem here is now, who in this room would dare to say what is the planetary boundary for soil? But the point is, if this language that is in the margins right now, but if that becomes a universe language for sustainable development goals, then it means in practical terms that only those boundaries are accepted that are set by scientific standards. So climate, maybe fishery, maybe even forests, but soils. And we should be very careful here to put in the right language for soils, and it's not yet there. Yeah. If that becomes true, then at the end of the day, you haven't achieved nothing.
On the right language for soils,
objection.
I don't forget you over there. I don't forget you.
It is rather on the solution, how to actually get the buy-in of farmers on the solution. I think while designing the solution, we should first and foremost make sure that we have fully understood what farmers are doing and why they are doing what they are doing, the way they are doing it. Because failing to understand that is indeed failing to be able to sell any solution to them. Because especially in the developing world, farmers are probably illiterate, but they are not stupid. So ensuring that we fully have that understanding before trying or attempting to sell any solution to them is, I think, of utmost importance.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just a minute. Okay, your message to the public.
Thank you very much. I'm permanent representative of Thailand to FAO and also the chairman of the Global Soil Partnership Assembly. I know it's very difficult to move the agenda into the SDG, but today we are together and combined with all the scientists, all policymakers and stakeholders, particular our friends and partnerships here. So it is very important that when we finish this week, I need your guidance and recommendation, how can we work together and develop the right language that the gentleman mentions, to move forward and make sure that in next SDG, we will have soil in the agenda. Please recommend to me. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the right language for the SDGs to convince New York, to convince other countries, seems to be a big challenge for our further discussions and maybe also for some work on the agenda of action. The gentleman over here, could you hand him the mic? Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Rolf Sommer. I'm from SIAT, Nairobi. I was wondering if I were a policymaker and listening to us people here, probably my first question would be, what's the cost? And I'm not sure if we have already a clear understanding if conserving soils, zero soil degradation, if this is free of charge or if there are costs involved. There were talks about payment for environmental services. There were people mentioning that things that we find good may not be acceptable by the farmers. So there may be incentives required. And I wonder if we know the costs, and I wonder if we know who pays the bill in the end.
Okay, I take that as a new challenge also for our further debates. Look at the costs, revisit maybe the agenda on subsidies, also with regard to the costs and the hidden costs and who will pay them, and have a look what's beyond the GDP.
My name is Parviz Kuhafkian. I am the former director of Land and Water in FAO and one of those who made Global Soil Partnership to happen. There was a comment about we need money for soil, but please, not the kind of money we spent on soil for the last 50 years or 30 years, spending so much money in details. We need money to make difference. Soil, of course, is very important. We know, all aware, we are converted all, but the kind of money we need is for really helping farmers to increase their productivity, family farmer, small farming, really to bring the environmental services together. And in fact, if we balance the cost for preventing land degradation and reducing erosion, is actually the money we could get with environmental services. Professor Lal this afternoon said something very, very important. Let's really put the balance and really calculate what is the cost of losing the soil and what kind of money we want not to lose the soil. That is an important message that we should convey to ourselves more than the outsiders.
Okay, thank you. I take that as a message also to reflect more on investments. I had another comment here to my right.
Heiner Benking, Council of Global Issues. You probably remember, watch your metaphors. This also applies to boundaries, to words, to models. What we have been laying out with Noel Brown after Rio 92 is to invest into common shared frames of references. And if you take this as a superstructure, then any kind of symbol, any kind of wording, definition, but also any kind of symbol and icon and index can be included. And I think this work, which started already in the late 80s here in Germany, in the gorging of a UN harmonization project, G7 OECD was involved. I think this is needed because otherwise we only stumble over definitions.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Martin Rokitsky from Oxfam GB. I'd like to pick up on this issue again, and I think that came out of the last comments as well, sort of soil in the center, interlinkages with other parts of the nexus. How do we position soil in the SDGs? Which target, which goal, which sub-target? Do we cozy up to the water community and so on? I think something that that I hope in the coming 2 days we can concretize a little is where are the strategic windows of opportunity? Just to question this issue on productivity a little, like the issue of soil degradation jeopardizes land productivity or productivity of soils, which I think isn't a very good punchline at all. And here's why. Like 80% of the world population, I think, buys food in supermarkets. And food is still in the shelves on supermarkets, and like 60% live in cities and so on. They all purchase and they get their food in supermarkets. And the food prices, yes, in some countries and so on have gone up, but not dramatically yet. And we can't even sort of assign scientifically, I had a couple of conversations before, how much of a potential price increase in food is related to soil degradation. We don't have that knowledge, and I think that'll... this is just to show or to say, like, we need to be very smart in language and in the terms and actually work out the 1, 2, 3 main strategic windows of soils that are open and create a clear narrative, like 2, 3 punchlines that are clear to everyone, which, for instance, would make a case against putting soils too closely in the sphere of productivity, as we can't single out soil degradation as a factor in the increase of food prices, for instance. Maybe there's others. Maybe there's something ecosystem services. We take away future generations, like more towards the sustainability issue. Maybe that's more punchy for the people in New York. Thanks.
Thank you, Martin. Colleagues, I would like to wind up the discussion because we have 22 minutes left, and my ambition would be to release you a little bit earlier in order to be able to relax for a moment before going to dinner tonight. What I took from the discussion were a couple of keywords. Use windows of opportunity, find the right language, use the right metaphors, dare to take risks in your messages, don't wait until everything is finalized. Look about the governance issues and the decision-making issues, have a look at that. Include topics such as indicators, look at soils and cities, try to accommodate that in our discussions and in further soil weeks. To wind up, one last question to you. Your host is Germany, and Germany plays also a crucial role in European soil legislation and commitment of Europe to better soil protection at national, European, and at the SDG level. If you look at our discussions, and if Rainer Kaiser tomorrow goes to our new Ministry for the Environment, we will have one, we are just about to have a new government, what would you recommend him to tell to his minister to convince him, now that's your final chance, your final window of opportunity to do something for soils? Do that. What would you tell him? Luc, what would you tell him?
Well, I would tell him that being soil in Germany or in Europe or worldwide, degraded land are underperforming assets. And therefore, for any government, the question might be, while allocating budget, how much those budgets are allocated to prevent degradation and restore or regenerate degraded land, how much it might impact GDP in a very inclusive manner. I think put that way, it may resonate differently both to the minister and its colleagues of finance or planning.
Okay. Anybody else from your side with a recommendation for Reinhard? To make German soil policies be more performant, more vigorous? Ron?
Yeah. Well, I know it's a very difficult task, and I would like to be in his place, but I believe my message will be that currently, although people has been saying that soil should be in the center, I think we are aware that soils are very important, and I think at this moment, soils are in the agenda. And just Google and try to see how many activities, initiatives are on soils. So this is a precious moment for us, and we don't have to wait and think that soil should be in the center, because otherwise, if they will be in the center, why we struggle to really get activities and support from decision takers and so on? That should be the question, and I don't think we will succeed on that. And that is related to this kind of perhaps fearing that I know there is an internal soil legislation here, and of course, if you have a regional, that could be some effects. But I believe, I would say that the Global Soil Science Society is trying to partner together towards a common goal that is sustainable soil management. And we know that Germany is an example in terms of soils. But that is why it will be important to change and give a message that, yes, we are united towards the sustainable soil management of soils, but not only here, from local to a global. And I will just suggest that we join this regional and global effort towards that.
Okay. Will you convince your minister?
I think I would try to convince my minister that Germany should intensify its international engagement as to soil protection. I was quite impressed by the statement of the president of the GIZ in the opening session, who really made it a point for one of the most important agencies of the German government to ask for international treaties, for indicators and for targets on the international level to support the national discussions in the various countries. And I think my job would be to convince my minister to support these efforts done by the GIZ and by the BMZ, and also the efforts of the BMBF, the Ministry on Research, to support events like this. I think the conference gives good arguments to talk with my minister about that.
Okay. A minute, please. If you're not, you destroy my quarter of an hour that I want to give as a gift to everybody. So you have 1 minute. Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah. I'd like your point on spending more money, but don't do it the old style. I'm advocating a transitional governance also for the money part, but also for the scientific community as itself, as you're sitting here. I mean, these people in New York are no alien species. They're, if an idea, I'm sorry, but if an idea doesn't fly here in this room, it won't fly anywhere. So my point is, for this soil community, this has to come up with some flying ideas, and then you will see them flying elsewhere. But it has to be started in this room. And that is why I made this point on the stewardship idea, on how to get the private sector involved and to produce something that a consumer can see when he goes into the supermarket and sees, well, this is in some way related to good soil.
Okay. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to you to stay on with us long in the evening. The quarter of an hour that I will give you, you can use it to go to your left to make some of these nice earth seed soil seed balls that you can take home in order to have a souvenir in your garden or on your terrace. Have a nice evening. Enjoy yourself, and I hand over to Yes.
Well, you guys definitely deserved your dinner after standing here all the time. Jenny really looks like dinner feeling. 3 brief points. First, on Thursday, because currently you're extremely eager to do something like this, they're deepening the debates workshops. So maybe if you return tonight or tomorrow morning, a little bit refreshed, have a look at these boards. There are interesting topics popping up, and I would appreciate if you could please be so kind to indicate your interest, and if you have some addition to put these proposals to the boards. We would need this information roundabout by Wednesday noon, which is tomorrow. Second, in order to learn from you how you perceive this whole event, the Global Soil Week as a platform, we have put in some evaluation sheets in your conference package. I know there's quite a bit of paper in there, but if you flip through the pages, you will find the evaluation form. Please make use of it, because otherwise we won't be able to improve. And last but not least, ensuring food security. It's essential that you have your badges with you, because there's going to be security at the entrance. And second, the buses leave at 6:45. And I'm very much looking forward to be able to welcome you all at the Umspannwerk in Kreuzberg, which is quite a nice place, and there's lovely food. And let's have beer tonight. Cheers.